guys, what's up? It's Raven. In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I created this DIY framed in magnetic chalkboard that also features a roll of paper for my daughter Ziya's playroom. I got this idea off of Pinterest and I just really wanted to add this feature into her playroom because she had this wall space and I thought it would inspire creativity and also be really useful for homeschooling. I know that you can just get chalkboard paint and paint it directly onto your wall and paint the entire wall, but I wanted to do something that was a little bit more custom and a little bit more cute and stylized. So I'm going to show you guys how I got this result. So the first step was to move everything out of the way and clear off the wall space, which you guys saw in my last home decor update video. And then from there, I just took some painter's tape and wanted to kind of tape out a rough estimate of how big and also where I wanted the framed in chalkboard to go. I decided on 5 feet by 6 feet and just centering it on the wall pretty much, but placing it a little bit low down because Ziya is only 4 and I want her to be able to reach a majority of the chalkboard. From there, I had to order a custom piece of galvanized sheet metal from a metal place. I honestly don't even know what you would call this place, but this wasn't really something that I could just get from Home Depot or Lowe's or anything like that. I had to get it from a specialty place and get it custom cut. And I also gathered up a few more supplies, nothing really too crazy. The main things that you need, of course, are the chalkboard paint. And from there, it's kind of up to you on how you want to secure this onto your wall and if you want to frame it in or not. But of course, the most important step was to paint this piece of metal with the chalkboard paint. So the reason why I got this piece of metal is because I really wanted a magnetic chalkboard wall. That way I could use Ziya's little magnetic numbers and letters with it. So that's why I'm starting with this piece of metal and then just painting over it with the chalkboard paint. According to a lot of the Pinterest, tutorials that I saw, there's not really any need to prime or sand the metal or anything like that. You should be able to just paint directly on it, but you do have to do several coats. So I actually ended up doing about 4 coats of this chalkboard paint, making sure to let it fully dry for basically a whole day in between each coat. You really want to try to be as even and as consistent as possible with this because it does show the texture of the paint roller if you're not being careful. I wasn't able to get mine completely smooth, but I mean, it's not really that big of a deal. I would say though, if you're doing this, really be very consistent with how you're applying the paint and just do little thin layers at a time and build it up. By the 4th coat, it was completely opaque and it was looking good. So then from there, I wanted to paint the framing. I actually got this framing from Home Depot. It's just like baseboard framing that they use around the house, and you can get it cut to size, but they don't cut it at an angle like this. So I did actually have to have my handyman come over and cut, or I think it's called mitering, the corners so that when it goes together, it creates a perfect square. And they do come already pre-painted in the standard white trim color, but I definitely needed to buy some of the paint and repaint them because they were a little bit beat up and dirty and dingy and nicked up from the store. And also I just wanted to make sure the paint color was consistent and fresh. So I bought some paint and just gave it a fresh coat of paint. The next step was to measure out and level out the area where I had taped it out on the wall before. When I taped it out, I just did a rough measurement and just slapped the tape up there, but that is not going to work for actually mounting the frame. So we needed to actually precisely measure it, make sure all the lines were level, and draw out kind of the frame of where this is going to go on the wall perfectly, because then from there we're going to measure out where the studs are in the wall and mark that off, because this needs to be nailed into the studs in the wall. Otherwise, if it's just attached to the drywall, it is going to just fall off the wall. This metal is actually very heavy and we need to make sure that we're nailing it into the studs. So from there we can copy over our template that we drew onto the wall onto the actual piece of metal so that we have corresponding markings of where the studs are in in the wall, because we are then going to pre-drill holes into the metal so that we can then nail through those holes to attach it onto the wall. This is like not able to just be directly nailed into or screwed into. You have to pre-drill holes, and so we just want to make sure that we're putting the holes where the studs in the wall will be. Hopefully that makes sense. Then another thing to keep in mind with chalkboard paint in general is that you have to do several coats. You have to let it cure, I think, for 3 days before you put any chalk on it, which we did. And then you have to season the chalkboard by rubbing a piece of chalk sideways all over the whole thing to basically fill in the porous paint with chalk. This is going to ensure that when you go to write on it, that it will erase properly. You have to do this, otherwise your chalkboard is not going to work properly. So I had Ziya help me. We basically just filled up the entire chalkboard and then erased it to kind of help the dust sink in and season it. I just wanted to go ahead and get this out of the way because I knew I would forget later. But then I went back to actually attach the curtain rod, which is going to be for the paper roll. So I got this curtain rod from Walmart and ordered the rolls of paper off of Amazon, making sure that both of those things were the right size to correspond with each other. And then just like with how I'm going to attach the metal to the wall, I also need to pre-drill holes into the metal to attach this curtain rod to the metal. So I'm taking my drill and I'm measuring out how the curtain rod would normally just go into a wall or whatever, and measuring out the holes to put it into the metal, pre-drilling those holes so that when we get it up on the wall, we'll be able to attach this curtain rod into the metal and into the wall as well. So I just kind of put it on there just to test it out and make sure that it was going to work and look how I wanted it to look, and it worked out really well. This was the perfect size little mini curtain rod for this paper roll. And the way the curtain rod works is actually very easy to kind of take it apart if I need to add another roll of paper as well. So from there, I was just double checking everything, making sure that the framing fit together perfectly all around the chalkboard, making sure that the curtain rod paper roll situation was working, just kind of double checking all of my pre-drilled holes and everything. And then it was time to actually bring everything upstairs, which was a doozy, and I had to have my parents help me mount this on the wall. So unfortunately, when we got it up there, for some reason the pre-drilled holes were not in the right spot. We went to go put in the first nail and it just went straight through. It did not hit a stud, even though we used the stud finder and we thought we found where the stud was. Our hole was just not in the right spot. It did not hit a stud. So we remeasured everything, checked everything again, and had to drill some more holes. Then once we got the holes perfectly right, we were able to actually start nailing it into the wall. So we are using roofing nails. They're really long nails with a pretty big head on them. And again, making sure that we're nailing it directly into a stud. That is what's going to hold it on there. So there's a few going across the top of the chalkboard and a few going across the bottom. And it felt very, very sturdy once we got it in there. Then to add the framing around it, we are using these finishing nails, which are a little bit smaller and they don't really have a head on them, which helps to kind of hide them later. And we're just kind of nailing directly through the wood framing into the wall in a few places, going around it just to kind of hold it on there. We did have to kind of double check and measure where we were putting the framing to make sure that it was going to, you know, be equal and be level and look professional. You can't just slap this stuff on there. You have to use your leveler. You have to measure and double check before you start nailing. Otherwise, everything is going to be looking crooked and looking crazy. So we did our best to get everything looking straight and professional and nailed it in. Then it was time to attach the little curtain rod for the paper roll. So since I had pre-drilled those holes into the sheet metal, it was pretty easy to just take the hardware that the curtain rod came with and attach it through the metal into the wall. So that worked out really well. That was probably the easiest part of the whole entire assembly process. But then I felt like my seasoning on the chalkboard didn't really work how it was supposed to work. So I just went ahead and seasoned the entire chalkboard one more time just to be sure. So now everything is assembled, everything's attached to the wall. The only thing is that the nails are showing in the framing, and the way that you fix that is you countersink them. So you get something that pushes the nails all the way through in there so that they're flush. And then you take some of this putty stuff. It's kind of like caulk. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's used to kind of fill in cracks and fill in the little spots that the nails make. I just was taking a little bit on my finger and wiping it into the little holes that the nails were making to cover that up. And I also put it in the cracks on the corner of the framing as well to kind of fill that in and make it look more seamless. I did that all around the whole frame to fill in all the holes and cracks, wiping off the excess as I went, and then it dries pretty fast. So about an hour later, I was able to come back with a piece of sandpaper and sand all of that down really smooth and flush, just to try to make it look as seamless and as professional as possible. Obviously, I'm not a professional, so it wasn't completely smooth, but it looked pretty good, to where then I was able to take that white paint that I had from before and just repaint over and touch up all the paint around all the framing. That way you can barely see where we nailed it in, and you can't really see the cracks in the corners anymore. So it just looks more smooth and seamless and professional. So then I just let the paint dry, and then I took the paper roll down and started kind of setting everything up. I grabbed some of Ziya's magnetic numbers and letters and stuck those on there. So the magnetic aspect works super well. And then I also wanted to have a spot to hold all of the chalk. So I got this little wall mounted basket thing that actually has a chalkboard front on it. And I just took a chalkboard marker and wrote chalk on the front of it and mounted that right next to the chalkboard so that she can kind of have a little spot to hold all of her little chalk and the eraser and stuff. And that's pretty much it. I love this because you can use chalk markers on it, you can use chalk, you can use regular markers and crayons on the paper roll. It just really is super fun, and you can create a lot of different types of art in this one space. Ziya was super excited about it. She kept asking about it because this project did take about a month to complete from start to finish, with all the planning and ordering the pieces and painting and waiting for stuff to dry. It was a long process, so she was really excited by the time it was finally done. It's at the perfect height to where basically the lower half she can reach, and she can draw on the paper and use her magnets and use her chalk. And I hung the little basket of chalk low enough for her to be able to reach it herself. But then for the upper section, it's kind of just high enough for me to be able to reach it, or any adult to be able to reach it. So let's say if I wanted to use the upper section for homeschooling and then let Ziya just go crazy on the lower section, I think that would work really well. And of course, with the paper roll, she can draw on the paper as much as she wants, fill it all up, and then when it's full, she can just rip it off and pull it down and have more paper to draw on. So yeah, it's really fun. I think it's going to be a great feature to have in the playroom to help keep her busy, but also be super functional and educational as well. I also think it's just really cute. It adds a lot to the room, and it kind of goes with the kind of modern farmhouse vibes that I have throughout the house as well. So I'm really excited to finish styling the whole entire playroom and bring everything together. But yeah, I just wanted to do this video just to kind of show you guys the process of how this is done. If you need more details and a better explanation and list of materials, definitely check out the blogs that I have linked down below. Those are the ones that I used for inspiration, and it was super helpful. So I hope you guys like this video. Let me know what you think of the chalkboard. Comment down below any other ideas that you have to add into her playroom, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.